Secretary Mayorkas, the Uyghur people are a religious and ethnic minority in northwest China. Your administration and the last administration have both concluded that the Chinese government is committing genocide against this people. Do you agree with that assessment?
Yes, I do, and it's why we are so vigorously enforcing the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act.
Well, thank you for the candid answer on that. That's much better than, for instance, the TikTok CEO could give last week about the genocide against this people. Part of Congress's reaction, as you suggested, was in 2021 passing a bill that I and many others sponsored. In fact, I think it was a majority of senators, known as the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act. It passed the Senate unanimously, so I know that you're familiar with it. The law requires Customs and Border Protection at DHS to presume that materials sourced from that province are produced by forced labor because of the widespread usage of forced labor in the province among the suppressed people. It bars those products from importation into the United States. And under that law, every textile manufacturer has to certify that their imported materials aren't sourced from Xinjiang province in China. It's come to my attention that a veteran-owned company called Nine Line Apparel, which prides itself on ethically sourced products, recently decided to trust but verify their suppliers' certifications that the cotton they were using originated in Central America rather than in China. So they had their supposedly clean textile imports professionally tested. It turned out that slave-produced fabric from China was mixed in and passed off as Central American cotton. Nine Line Apparel did the right thing, got rid of all that material, and they reported it to Customs and Border Protection, offering to give them all the evidence they needed from their professional testing facility. But unfortunately, CBP decided not to follow up. They directed Nine Line Apparel to submit a complaint to a generic email box, which was not replied to. When Nine Line Apparel CEO then followed up by calling CBP directly, CBP told him that enforcing this act's ban on slave-produced textiles and other fabric is not one of their top priorities. Mr. Secretary, is enforcing the federal ban on slave-produced products and materials from China a top priority for your department?
It most certainly is.
Why would CBP have told the CEO of Nine Line Apparel that this is not a top priority?
That is not a reflection of our prioritization of this work, nor is it consistent with our prioritization of this work. And I must say that the Act is an incredibly important statute that Congress passed, and I appreciate your leadership in achieving it. It is something that we enforce very, very vigorously and need to do so. And I should say that the Act provides that it pertains to materials produced in whole or in part with forced labor. And I cite that because that is very important language, because we do not countenance at all the use of forced labor by the PRC. And we cannot allow materials into the United States that are in violation of the statute.
Okay, thank you for that answer, Mr. Secretary. I think it's important that we heard that here in public for everyone in CBP to hear that their secretary believes that the enforcement of the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act is a top priority, correct?
Oh, yes, and let me assure you that the personnel of CBP are in perfect lockstep with me.
Well, I know that sometimes in bureaucracies, messages don't always get transmitted as clearly as leaders might like, so I'm glad that we have you saying that clearly today. I would also like to be able to follow up with you and your team in the next couple weeks about this specific case of Nine Line Apparel and see what might have happened in that matter.
I look forward to doing so.
Second, I want to turn to TikTok. We've had a lot of talk about fentanyl today, rightly so, given the surge in drug deaths in this country. TikTok has sometimes been referred to as digital fentanyl. You may have seen last week that the CEO of TikTok testified, and he tried to pass off this Chinese communist spying app as safe because it had a, quote, U.S.-based team who oversees the massive amounts of Americans' data that TikTok vacuums up. So I want to talk about those U.S.-based employees. Last year, your department approved more than 700 applications for foreign nationals to work at TikTok and ByteDance's offices in California. Do you happen to recall how many of those 700 were Chinese nationals?
Let me assure you Senator, that we are very focused on the threat that TikTok presents, and we are very, very focused on the threat that the PRC presents.
So I'll come
in a
to
number
that
of-
general threat in a moment. I'm just
number of
curious,
different areas.
Do you recall how many of those 700 foreign nationals that were approved to work at TikTok and ByteDance's California offices were Chinese nationals?
Senator, I would be very pleased to look into that.
There's 445. It doesn't sound like a U.S.-based team to me, despite whatever Xiao Chu, the CEO of TikTok, said last week, if they're predominantly Chinese nationals. Do you think employees coming to work at ByteDance and TikTok in the United States might be tied to the Chinese Communist Party or the People's Liberation Army?
Senator, that is indeed a concern of ours, and we are working to ensure that the visa screening process is as robust and vigilant as it needs to be.
Okay,
Let me share also that, of course, the TikTok transaction is something that is under a review and is the subject of litigation. We are very, very focused on the peril that TikTok presents.
I understand. I think TikTok should have been banned a long time ago. I would point out that last week, as the administration floated this plan, so-called Project Texas, which I think is deeply misguided, and the sale of TikTok, China's government said they would never allow that to happen, which contradicts everything TikTok has ever said about not being beholden to the Chinese government. But I want to come back to your department. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, reports to you. They call themselves America's Cyber Defense Agency. I looked on their website recently. As far as I can tell, though, CISA has never issued a warning about TikTok, other than to recommend people update the TikTok app to fix software bugs. I got to say, I'm less concerned about bugs in TikTok than I am about features in TikTok. And the features of TikTok is it's designed to vacuum up every bit of data on an American's phone, not just their videos from the app itself, but their contacts, their emails, their text messages, their photos, perhaps even activate their microphones and their cameras remotely. So has CISA ever issued a warning to the American people about TikTok other than updating the software to avoid bugs?
Senator, CISA's focus is indeed on cybersecurity. We are a member of the Committee for Foreign Investments in the United States, CFIUS, of which you are very familiar. And we, and across the administration, are focused on the TikTok challenge more broadly.
Well, I would encourage you and CISA to take a more or to take a closer look at this and make it more prominent on the website. I think many Americans still don't understand why so many of their elected officials are so hostile to TikTok. Even that hearing last week when Democrats and Republicans alike excoriated the disgraceful performance of Xiao Chu, this TikTok CEO, they're still wondering why their elected officials are so worried about their privacy and their security. Let's turn to Mr. Chu. Do you know what nationality Xiao Chu is?
I do not, Senator.
It's hard to find out on the internet what he is. He's often referred to as a Singaporean. He spent a lot of time in America, though, if you look at his resume. I assume that he's not an American citizen, because if he was, I'm pretty sure TikTok would refer to him as our American CEO, as they did his short-term predecessor.
Senator, just a number of months ago, I was in Singapore, and to address in the Indo-Pacific region the threat that the PRC presents. When countries accept their loans, there's no free lunch, as I articulated in my remarks, and how precarious it is to allow the PRC to actually build and own the infrastructure upon which many of these countries rely.
Well, I appreciate that. I just want to have a few concluding thoughts with Mr. Chu, who seems to me like a Communist Party stooge and an agent of communist influence in America. You know, he wouldn't admit what you admitted very quickly and highlighted the importance of, that China is committing a genocide against its own people. In fact, I think he was asked once if TikTok spies on Americans, and his answer was that, well, he wouldn't use the word spying as exactly the right word. So the Immigration and Nationality Act makes any alien deportable if they, quote, engage in any activity to violate any law of the United States relating to espionage or sabotage or a few other things. Seems to me that Mr. Chu is a foreign national in the United States representing essentially an arm or an agency of the Chinese Communist Party, as they acknowledged last week. he shouldn't be allowed to stay in the United States, and he certainly shouldn't be invited back in. I don't think we need agents of Chinese communist influence in our country, especially coming to spread their lies in the United States Congress. See, my time has expired. I look forward to following up with you on the Forced Labor Act matter, and thank you for clarifying that for all of your CBP officers around the country.
Thank you, Senator.